When the priest said his final amen, I thought the silence that followed would break me. But it wasn't grief that cut the deepest that day. It was the sound of my daughter-in-law's voice. Calm, cold and sharp as glass. "Stop crying, Henry. Pack your bags. Get out." That was at my son's funeral. My own house. The one my late wife Elaine and I built with our hands and our dreams back in 1987. I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I just looked at her and walked away. Because sometimes silence is the loudest answer a man can give. 3 days later, I walked into her office with the deed and the trust. Please subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments what time it is where you're watching from. It helps more than you know. But let me start from the beginning. Because Lena didn't turn cruel overnight. She just grew comfortable mistaking kindness for weakness. After Elaine passed, the house got too quiet. I spent my mornings sanding the porch railings we'd painted together and my evenings staring at her empty chair. My son Andrew used to stop by twice a week, bringing groceries or fixing a light bulb that didn't really need fixing. He'd say, "Mom would have wanted the place to stay bright," and for a while it did. Then came the accident. A rainy Thursday on Route 9, the call that no parent is ever ready for. I remember the police officer's eyes before his words. That's how you always know. Lena cried that night, but even in her tears there was calculation. I saw it. The way she looked around the living room, taking in the hardwood floors, the antique cabinet Elaine had restored, the framed blueprint of the house I'd drawn myself. She was already measuring ownership while I was trying to remember how to breathe. The funeral was held at St. Luke's Chapel. She chose the music, the flowers, the casket, everything. When I suggested Andrew's favorite hymn, the one he'd sung off-key as a boy while helping me hang drywall, she cut me off. Too depressing. She said, "We need something more uplifting." I sat there in my old gray suit, the same one I'd worn to Elaine's service, and watched Lena command the room like it was a business meeting. Every handshake she offered was a performance, every tear perfectly timed. After the burial, people came back to the house for the reception. My house, though you'd never have known it from the way she barked orders in my kitchen. When the last guest left, she turned to me with that real estate agent smile of hers. "Henry, we need to talk about your situation." "My situation? You're financially dependent on us now. Andrew was supporting you and, well, I can't carry that burden." That word, burden, it hit harder than any sermon or eulogy. I'd spent 40 years building this home, paying every tax bill, every insurance premium, every repair. I'd built more than a house. I'd built a life. But she looked at me like I was some charity case the wind had blown in. "I've been more than generous letting you stay here," she continued. "But this house is mine now. Andrew left it to me." I nodded slowly, letting her think she'd won something. In truth, I was just counting her mistakes. She had no idea Andrew had never owned the house. He grew up here, sure, but own it? Never. She'd never seen a deed, never seen a mortgage statement, never once asked how the bills were paid. Why would she? Andrew handled the day-to-day, or so she thought. The truth sat quietly in the basement. 4 drawers of neatly labeled files, tax receipts, deeds, trust papers. 40 years of proof that humility is not helplessness. People see what they expect to see. Lena expected an old man clinging to memories too soft to fight back, and that's exactly what I let her see. I wore plain shirts. I drove my 15-year-old Honda. I said little and listened a lot. Because when people underestimate you, they show you their plans before they make their moves. And by the time Lena finished making hers, I already knew exactly how to undo them. If you're still listening, hit subscribe. I share stories about quiet men who don't shout to prove their worth. They prove it when it counts. Because what Lena was about to learn is that the most dangerous man in any room is the one who doesn't need to prove anything at all. The morning after the funeral, I woke up to the sound of cupboards slamming. Lena was in the kitchen, my kitchen, talking on the phone in her sharp, rehearsed voice. "Yes, the property's technically in transition," she said, pacing between the sink and the counter. "But I'll handle everything." She ended the call when she saw me standing in the doorway. "Oh, Henry, didn't hear you come down. I was just sorting out some financial things." Financial things. That's how she talked about my son's death, like a transaction that hadn't cleared yet. "I'm sure you'll want to stay somewhere smaller," she said. A senior community, maybe. Something more suited to your situation. There it was again. My situation. I didn't answer. Just poured my coffee and watched the sunlight stretch across the kitchen tile. Elaine had loved that view. She used to hum while making breakfast, sunlight hitting her hair. A dozen little moments that money could never buy. "Lena," I said quietly, "you know I built this place, right?" She smiled the way people do when they think you're confused. "Of course, Henry. You and Elaine made it a home, but legally it's been Andrew's since her passing. He left everything to me." I nodded. "Everything?" "Yes, the house, the savings, the insurance, all of it." She believed it too. That's what made it almost merciful. After she left for work, I went down to the basement. My archive, my evidence, my sanctuary. Dust floated in the cold air, glittering like the ghosts of old plans. I pulled open the filing cabinet marked Property Records 1980s. Inside, every receipt, every blueprint, every inspection certificate had my name on it. Then the one paper that mattered most. Deed recorded March 15th, 1987. Owner, Henry Mitchell. Not Andrew, not Lena. Me. I smiled, not out of spite, but relief. Elaine had always teased me about keeping every scrap of paper. "Someday you'll thank your obsession, Henry," she'd say, sorting through old envelopes. Turns out she was right again. That night I made a list, not of what I'd lost, but of what Lena thought she'd gained. The house, worth around $400,000 by her own estimate. The life insurance, $150,000. And the trust, $850,000, sitting quietly in a bank account under my control since 1985. 3 assets she believed were hers. 3 lessons she was about to learn. Still, I didn't feel anger. Just a deep, steady kind of sadness. Because grief does strange things to people. It makes some folks humble, and others cruel. By the end of that week, Lena had begun removing every trace of the life Elaine and I built. Family photos gone from the mantle. My CPA certificates off the wall. Even Andrew's childhood drawings vanished from the refrigerator. "I'm redecorating," she said when I asked. "This place needs updating." Updating. As if 40 years of love were outdated wallpaper. That night I sat alone in the den. Just me, Elaine's favorite lamp, and a silence so heavy it almost hummed. I could have confronted her. I could have shouted, demanded respect, demanded truth. But that's not how you win battles like this. Quiet men win with patience, not volume. And when you've spent your life balancing numbers and waiting for interest to grow, you learn that time is always on your side. I looked at the wall where our wedding photo used to hang and whispered, "Don't worry, Elaine, she'll learn," because Lena's education was coming, and her tuition was about to cost her everything she thought she owned. Wednesday morning came with cold air and clarity. Lena's timeline was taped to the refrigerator. A neat little eviction plan printed in bold letters. November 15th, circled in red ink. The day she expected me to disappear from my own home. I stood there, sipping coffee from the same mug Elaine used every morning, and felt a kind of quiet amusement. It wasn't defiance. It was recognition. The kind of calm that settles over you when you finally see the board and realize you've been playing chess while the other person thought it was checkers. Lena had built her entire case on one assumption, that Andrew owned this house. She'd never seen a deed, never paid a tax bill, never questioned a thing. She simply believed that because she'd lived here for 8 years, it must somehow belong to her. But assumptions are dangerous things, especially when they're made about a man who has kept every document he's ever signed since 1978. I walked down to the basement again, flipping through decades of paper until I found the folder labeled Trust. Private. Inside was the story she didn't know. The Thomas and Elaine Mitchell Family Trust, established June 15, 1985. Elaine's handwriting still marked the corners in blue ink. The trust held everything. The house, the savings, the investments. Andrew had been listed as a beneficiary during his lifetime, not an inheritor. It meant he could use what the trust provided. The comfort, the education, the help, but he never owned it outright. And with Elaine gone, and Andrew gone, it all reverted back to me. I sat there staring at the pages, and for a moment I could almost hear Elaine laughing softly. She'd always said, "Plan for the living, Henry. The dead don't need much." Well, she'd planned well. By noon, I'd called my lawyer, Margaret Collins. No relation to my wife, just another one of life's odd coincidences. Margaret had been handling my affairs for 2 decades. She answered on the second ring. "Henry," she said, "I was expecting this call. I think it's time," I told her. "Do you want to move quickly?" "As quickly as truth allows." I heard her smile through the phone. "Good. Come by tomorrow morning. Bring the trust, the deed, and whatever patience you have left." That night, Lena came home late. Perfume first, excuses second. She barely looked at me as she dropped her purse on the counter. "Henry, I've started getting estimates for the kitchen remodel," she said. "Once you're settled somewhere else, we'll update this space." "Will." That word, like she was the rightful heir to my 40 years of labor. I didn't respond. I just rinsed my coffee cup and set it beside the sink. She sighed. "Look, I know this is hard for you. Losing Andrew, facing reality. It's a lot for an older man to handle." I looked up. "Reality?" "Yes. You can't live here alone anymore. You'll be better off somewhere that can look after you." I studied her for a long moment. The confidence, the polished tone, the way she mistook pity for power. "Lena," I said evenly, "do you know what happens when people underestimate accountants?" She frowned. "What?" "They get audited." I left her standing in the kitchen, mouth half open, still thinking this was just grief talking. But I'd already decided how this story would end, and it wouldn't end with me packing boxes. Thursday morning came crisp and quiet. The kind of morning Elaine used to love. Coffee steaming by the window, sunlight brushing across the hardwood. Except this time it wasn't peace I felt. It was precision. I left early for Margaret Collins' office, 3 manila folders under my arm. Each one labeled in my handwriting. Deed, taxes, trust. Margaret greeted me the same way she always did, with calm eyes and the kind of professionalism that never asked for explanation. She set the folders on her mahogany desk and adjusted her glasses. "All right, Henry," she said softly. "Let's make sure we have everything in order before we start teaching lessons." I chuckled under my breath. "Teaching lessons? I like that." She opened the first folder. Deed to 447 Maple Street, recorded March 15th, 1987. Sole ownership, Henry Mitchell. No co-signers, no joint title, no mortgage, correct? "Correct." She opened the second folder. Property taxes paid annually in your name, insurance premiums current, maintenance contracts all through your accounts. Every receipt accounted for. Good. Now the trust. When she opened that third folder, the papers seemed to glow faintly in the morning light. Elaine's handwriting still ran along the margins, her neat, graceful script. The Henry and Elaine Mitchell Family Trust. Established June 15th, 1985. Margaret flipped to the back page and looked up. Current balance? $853,412. All managed through First National Bank? Yes. The trust owns everything, including the house. Andrew was a beneficiary, not an owner. That means Lena never inherited a thing. Margaret nodded. Perfect. This will hold in any court, and since you're the sole trustee, you can act without waiting on probate. She looked me over for a moment, then asked quietly, "Henry, are you sure you want to confront her publicly?" "Margaret, she humiliated me at my son's funeral, in front of neighbors, friends, even the pastor. She called me a burden in my own house. I think she deserves to learn the truth in front of witnesses, too." Margaret smiled faintly. "Then let's do it properly. We'll schedule a meeting at her real estate office. I'll handle the legal documents. You just tell the truth." That phrase, "tell the truth," it sat well with me, because that's all this was ever about. Not revenge, not pride, just respect. By the time I got home that afternoon, Lena was in the living room with 2 of her real estate friends. They were walking around, snapping photos, talking in that fast, cheerful tone people use when they smell profit. "This space has good bones," one of them said. "Once you knock down that wall, it'll open up beautifully." Lena laughed. "I'm already planning a modern remodel. Tom will be moving out soon, so I'll have full control." Full control. That was her favorite phrase lately. I cleared my throat from the hallway. "Afternoon, ladies." The room went still. Lena turned, forcing a smile. "Henry, perfect timing. These are my colleagues. We were just making plans for my kitchen," I said gently. One of the women looked uncomfortable. It's a lovely home, Mr. Mitchell. You must have put a lot of work into it. Every nail, I replied. Well, the blonde one said, glancing at Lena, we'll let you two chat. We should head out. But Lena stopped them. No, stay. Henry and I were just discussing his transition. He knows it's time. Transition, I repeated. That's an interesting word. It's reality, Henry. You can't manage this place alone anymore. I looked around the room. The same crown molding I'd cut with my son when he was 12. The same floor Elaine had sanded until her hands blistered. You're right, I said finally. I can't manage this place alone. Lena smiled, thinking she'd won again. Exactly, it's best for both of us. I stepped closer. That's why I'll be bringing my lawyer tomorrow. We'll talk about ownership and reality. Her smile faltered. Your lawyer? Margaret Collins. You'll like her. She's good at explaining the difference between assumptions and facts. For the first time since the funeral, Lena looked unsure, and in that flicker of doubt I saw something new. Not fear, not anger, but the first spark of realization. The quiet man wasn't leaving. The quiet man was preparing. Friday morning carried that peculiar stillness before a storm. I dressed the way Elaine always liked me to when something important was coming. Dark coat, clean shoes, and a calm face. Then I tucked the 3 folders into my briefcase and drove to Premier Realty. Lena's office sat at the corner of Main Street, all glass and gloss and false smiles. Through the window I could see her laughing with a couple. Clients, probably. Selling dreams built on someone else's foundation. When I walked in, her laughter died. Henry, she said, trying to recover her tone, what are you doing here? Good morning, Lena, I replied evenly. We need to talk. I'm with clients, she said quickly. Can this wait? Before I could answer, Margaret Collins stepped through the door behind me, every bit the professional, steady, sharp, untouchable. It cannot wait, she said. Good morning, Mrs. Mitchell. I'm attorney Margaret Collins. We need to discuss your late husband's estate. The couple exchanged nervous glances. Maybe we should reschedule, the woman said. Yes, Lena replied too fast. Let's do that. They left, and the room fell silent except for the soft hum of the air conditioner. What's this about? Lena asked. Her confidence was already cracking. Margaret placed the first folder on her desk and opened it slowly. 447 Maple Street, she said, reading. Deed recorded March 15th, 1987. Sole ownership, Henry Mitchell. No co-signers, no joint title, no mortgage. Lena blinked. That can't be right. Andrew inherited this house when Elaine died. Elaine owned no property, Margaret said calmly. Everything was purchased by Henry before the marriage and placed in the family trust. She flipped open the second folder. Property tax records, insurance policies, utilities, maintenance contracts, all paid from Henry's accounts for 37 consecutive years. Lena's face went pale. But Andrew told me. Andrew, I said quietly, was a good son, but he didn't handle my finances. He helped me around the house, that's all. That's not possible, she said, her voice trembling. Margaret opened the third folder, the one labeled Trust. The Henry and Elaine Mitchell Family Trust, she read. Established June 15th, 1985. Current balance as of last week, $853,412. Lena stared at the numbers like they were written in another language. Andrew was a lifetime beneficiary, Margaret continued, but not an owner. Upon his death, all assets revert to the trustee, which is Henry. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. The life insurance, she managed finally. That's mine. Andrew, listed me as the beneficiary. Margaret shook her head. No. The policy names the Henry and Elaine Mitchell Family Trust as sole beneficiary. I watched as realization finally hit her. The color draining from her face. The walls of her delusion collapsing in real time. She looked around the office, suddenly aware that her co-workers had gone silent. Conversations had stopped. Phones weren't ringing. The room was a stage, and she was standing alone under the lights. Henry, she whispered. I didn't know. No, I said softly. You didn't ask. Her eyes filled with tears. You could have told me. You could have treated me with respect, I replied. Margaret closed the folders with quiet precision. Mrs. Mitchell, you have 30 days to vacate the property. You are legally a tenant, not an owner. Lena's hands trembled. Where will I go? That's not Henry's concern, Margaret said. You're an adult with a career. I'm sure you'll figure it out. The entire office was silent now. Even the hum of the air conditioner felt like a witness. I looked at Lena one last time. Respect isn't negotiable, I said. It never was. Margaret and I turned to leave. Behind us, Lena's voice broke the silence. Henry, what happens now? I stopped in the doorway. Now, I said. You learn what quiet people already know, that still waters don't mean shallow depths. And with that, we walked out into the morning light, leaving her to sit in the silence she'd created for herself. By the next morning, word had already spread farther than I expected. Cleveland's real estate circles move faster than gossip in a church pew. I didn't have to tell a soul. The story told itself. My neighbor Helen Davis was the first to show up. She'd known Elaine and me since the day we broke ground on that lot back in 1987. She stood on my porch holding 2 cups of coffee and a grin that said she'd heard everything. Henry, she said, handing me a cup, you just set the whole office district on fire. I raised an eyebrow. That so? She nodded. Word is, Lena had a full-blown breakdown after you left Premier Realty. 3 clients called the broker asking to switch agents. One even posted on social media about it. Something about dodging a bullet with an agent who doesn't understand property law. I couldn't help it. I laughed, not out of cruelty, but out of release. 2 months of insults, 2 months of being treated like a burden, and now the truth was doing the work for me. Helen sat down at the kitchen table, Elaine's old table, and leaned forward. You should have seen her face at the grocery store. Looked like she'd seen a ghost. No makeup, no heels, no entourage of realtors following her around. Just a cart full of clearance items. Maybe humility's finally on sale, I said, sipping my coffee. Helen chuckled. The whole community knows now. People are saying she built her life on assumptions and lost it on facts. It was poetic, really. The woman who made a living selling homes had never understood what made one hers. Not paperwork, not property, but respect. By afternoon, I got a call from Margaret Collins. Her voice carried that professional calm that lawyers use when they enjoy delivering news. Henry, she said. Lena's attorney reached out. Already? Yes. He's proposing a settlement. She wants to stay in the house another 6 months. Says she'll pay rent. Rent? I said, amused. How much? $2,000 a month. I nearly spilled my coffee. Margaret, the market rate for this neighborhood is over $3,000. I told her attorney the same thing. She replied. I countered at $3,500 per month, first and last month in advance, plus a security deposit. $10,500 due up front. Can she afford that? I doubt it, Margaret said. Her attorney sounded nervous. That night I sat by the fireplace, the one Elaine and I built brick by brick, and thought about how quickly power shifts when truth enters the room. A week ago, Lena held every card, or so she thought. Now all her cards were made of paper and I owned the deck. Helen stopped by again the next morning, this time with muffins. You're trending, she said, laughing. The post about the office confrontation has hundreds of comments. People are calling you the quiet storm. I smiled. Not sure I like being famous for my patience. Well, patience looks good on you, she said. Her tone softened. You handled this with grace, Henry. Elaine would have been proud. That last sentence hit me harder than I expected. I looked at the photograph of my wife on the mantel. Her gentle smile, the steady calm in her eyes. She'd always told me respect wasn't something you demand. It's something you teach. And without ever raising my voice, I had taught it. Later that afternoon, Margaret called again. She's moving out, she said. Couldn't afford the rent. Gave notice to Premier Realty, too. Looks like she's leaving town. I sat quietly for a moment, letting it sink in. Where's she going? Columbus, I think. A fresh start, her lawyer said. A start built on humility, I said softly. That's worth more than any house. That night I walked through the quiet halls of my home, and realized something strange. I didn't feel anger anymore. I didn't even feel satisfaction. I felt peace. Elaine had been right all along. Silence really is power. You just have to know when to use it. 3 quiet weeks passed before the doorbell rang again. By then the house had settled back into peace, the kind of peace Elaine used to fill with her humming. I'd gone back to my routines. Morning coffee by the window, afternoon walks, evenings reading by the fire. When I opened the door, Lena was standing there. No designer heels, no perfect hair, no confidence dripping off her like perfume. Just a plain coat, red eyes, and a cardboard box in her hands. "Hi, Henry," she said softly. "Lena," I replied. "I found some things that belong to you." She held out the box like an offering. Inside were photo albums, old birthday cards, and a stack of Elaine's recipe cards, the ones she used to write in her careful cursive. "Come in," I said. She stepped into the living room, the same one she'd once called outdated. Now she looked around like she was seeing it for the first time. "It looks the same," she said. "Why would it look different?" I asked. "I don't know," she whispered. "I guess I thought you might change things. Some things don't need changing," I said. We sat for a moment, the silence thick but not angry anymore. Lena's voice broke first. "Henry, I owe you more than an apology." "You don't owe me anything," I said. "Yes, I do. I treated you terribly. I made assumptions about everything. Your life, your finances, your worth. I was cruel when I should have been grateful." She looked down at her hands. "And now, I finally understand something." "What's that?" "That Andrew learned everything from you. His kindness, his calm, his strength. I used to think he got that from his own nature. But it was you, wasn't it?" I felt my throat tighten. "Andrew was a good man." "He was," she said. "And you were a good father?" She took a slow breath. "I'm trying to be a better person now. I found a job in Columbus, smaller city, new start. Maybe I can do better there." "I hope you can," I said. She nodded, then stood up. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." If I'd been respectful from the start, if I'd asked questions instead of making demands, would things have been different? I thought about it for a moment. "Probably," I said. "I would have helped you transition, given you time. Maybe even worked together to honor Andrew's memory instead of fighting over it." She nodded, eyes glassy. "I guess respect really isn't negotiable, is it?" "No," I said quietly. "It never was." She reached for the door, paused, and turned back. "Thank you for teaching me that." When she left, the house felt lighter. Not emptier, just right. I sat on the couch and opened the box she'd brought. Inside, on top of the photo albums, was one picture of Andrew as a boy, kneeling in the dirt, holding a hammer, building a birdhouse beside me. Elaine had taken it that summer. On the back she'd written in her neat cursive, "Teach him to build with care, Henry. He'll remember how it feels." And he had. That night I placed the photo on the mantel right beside Elaine's favorite candle and whispered, "I did what you taught me, sweetheart. I taught with care." The candle flickered once like an answer, and for the first time in months I slept easy. Sunday morning, sunlight poured through the curtains just the way Elaine used to like it. The house was still, but it didn't feel lonely anymore. It felt whole again, like it had finally remembered who it belonged to. I brewed my coffee and sat by the window the same way I had 1,000 mornings before and thought about everything that had happened. Lena was gone now, off to start a new chapter in Columbus. And I didn't wish her failure. I hoped she'd learned what she needed to, that respect isn't inherited, it's earned. Forgiveness, I realized, doesn't mean pretending nothing happened. It means accepting what did happen and moving forward with wisdom. You can forgive someone and still hold your boundaries. That's not bitterness, that's balance. When people ask me now if I regret not fighting back sooner, I tell them no. You don't win every battle by shouting. Sometimes silence is the sharpest tool you own. I glanced up at the photo of Elaine and Andrew above the mantel. 2 smiles frozen in time. One I'd loved, one I'd raised. "Looks like we handled it," I said softly. The house creaked in the morning light, and for a moment it felt like they were both answering me. I've learned that quiet men aren't weak. We're just selective about when we use our voices, and when we finally do, the right people listen. So if you've ever been underestimated, for your age, your calm, or your silence, remember this: power isn't in how loud you speak. It's in how long your truth lasts after the noise fades. If you're still here listening to my story, I'd like to hear yours. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to remind someone that respect isn't something you demand but something you show? And if you believe quiet strength still matters in this noisy world, hit subscribe, because I've got more stories like this. Stories about dignity, about patience, about people who stand tall without ever raising their voice. Until next time, remember, Quiet doesn't mean weak. It just means selective.